We're at another honest conversation, part of a research for an upcoming doc on the rise of anti-Semitism, the reasons, the root cause for this persistent problem, and some unlikely solutions offered by the wisdom of Kabbalah. Please like, comment, subscribe. Everybody knows already what to do to this channel. I have today with me, as usual, Dr. Michael Laitman, Doctor of Biocybernetics, PhD in philosophy and Kabbalah, author of more than 50 books, translated into 18 languages, including Like a Bundle of Reeds, Why Unity and Mutual Guarantee Are the Call of the Hour. As usual, thank you, Dr. Laitman, for making the time. I know you're running all over the place talking about this issue. And also with us today is Professor Stephen Eric Bronner, who is Board of Governors, Professor Emeritus of Political Science at Rutgers University and Co-Director of the International Council for Diplomacy and Dialogue, which he will tell us about later on. And he's a prolific writer, written over 25 books and numerous articles, have been translated into more than a dozen languages, and also, interestingly, the author of The Bigot, Why Prejudice Persists, and A Rumor About the Jews, Conspiracy, Anti-Semitism, and the Protocols of Zion. So very interesting combination we have today. And I really want to get into the conversation about hate. There's no question that the rising hate against the Jews has reached an all-time high. The numbers really, I think it's hard to find people who will say there's not really hate against Jews. I think it's clear, everybody feels it. There was a massive solidarity march in early January, which I've been to. It's in the air. People cannot say it's nothing. The question is, where is this hate coming from? And I understand, Professor Bronner, you talk about hate also as a phenomenon that arises in clusters, maybe not just towards Jews. So I want to hear what you think is the reason, the root of this rise in hate towards the Jews, maybe the existence of such hate towards Jews or in the world in general. Give us a little bit of your thinking about that.
I think that one of the things that makes anti-Semitism so durable against other forms of prejudice is that it has three moments. The religious, of course, Jews as the killer of the Christ. The social, which you find in Germany about with the Enlightenment, and then the political, which of course translated into political parties and the Nazis most famously organizing against Jews. Which of those three moments takes precedence in any particular time is an open question. Now, the second part of this, making it more complicated, is that I do believe that prejudice emerges in clusters. I think it's very difficult to find a bigot that simply hates one group. The Nazis, of course, didn't. They had an entire hierarchy of races that they opposed. That's the same thing with the white nationalists today. And given that this is the case, I believe that, how should I say, the battle against hate is a common battle that has to be fought. You can make an argument that Jews should be in the forefront, but my own position is that it shouldn't simply be Jews who are talking about Jews. There are many activists, Black activists, and religious activists, Christian, Muslim, who can be brought in to talk about Jews. And Jews, by the same token, should talk about other groups. I think that would broaden the discussion, make it more cosmopolitan.
Well, we'll get to the solution. But what are you saying? Where is that hate even coming from? Why is there such hate? We don't see hate in the animal kingdom, for that matter. Why such virulent forms of hate among among people in that sense.
Well, animals don't worship God, and absolutist religions become particularly powerful in a religious universe, which has become much more rationalized with modernity. I think that there is like if I can put it this way, a thread. Let me put it this way. The great sociologist Max Weber once said that ideology isn't like a taxi cab, which you can stop at the corner and say, I want to get off. I think that's the case with hate as well. Once it starts, it takes on its own dynamic. It takes different forms. It adapts itself or not to a particular set of circumstances. So what constitutes anti-Semitism in, in classical times is going to emphasize religion in a way that in secular terms or in a secular universe, it won't. As I said, there were three moments, right? The religious, the social, and the political. And under different circumstances, one of those three moments will take primacy, although all of them will exist at the same time. And Jews from the first were portrayed as the other. For example, there's the famous story of the looting of the temples. And one of the things that was interesting was in the Holy of Holies, there was nothing there. This completely flipped out the people the anti-Semites involved in the destruction of the temple. What's the conclusion they draw from nothing being there? Jews are actually atheists. If Jews don't eat pork, it's because they worship the pig. In other words, the anti-Semite fashions the Jew to meet his own needs, if that makes sense.
Well, interesting. Dr. Laitman, what does Kabbalah have to say about the dynamics of hate?
Yes.
Where does that come from? And specifically, to your point, the hate towards Jews.
Well, first of all, it has deep roots in ancient history, dating back to ancient Mesopotamia. This is also mentioned in the scriptures in one way or another. Back to this ancient kingdom of Mesopotamia or Babylon, this was sort of a center of human culture back then, the cradle of human civilization in a sense. And that civilization was developing from a kind of a primitive way of life where humanity was divided to groups and tribes and clans, and they were kind of coexisted, but then they started rising in conflict, in terms of conflict and social division. Essentially, the human egoism was developing. And then what we hear of as Abraham, they were actually, that Abraham and people around him, they were priests, they were spiritual leaders, religious leaders, who were serving the public in that ancient Mesopotamia. Sort of like social workers, to put it in today's terms. And they saw that people are becoming more egotistic, that people are becoming more in conflict with each other. And they looked at what's happening and they realized that this is the exponential growth of the human ego. And that's why people stopped feeling each other like kin. They stopped instinctively being together like a single person, like a single soul, if you want to call it that way, like a single nation. All those Babylonians began to be more individualistic and began to fight with each other, essentially. And so they knew that something needs to be done about it. So what they found, what Abraham found in his research, so to speak, is that what needs to happen is to rebalance society, which means they need to be re-educated towards unity, solidarity, love, connection. So that's why he was the first one to start talking about love thy friend as thyself, that we all have to connect, even though we don't want to, even though we naturally are inclined to be divided. But if we continue with that tendency, we'll just be at war with each other until we kill each other. And that created a lot of, this new ideology created a conflict with King Nimrod. So essentially, that King Nimrod told Abraham and the Abrahamic group, take your people and get out of here. So Abraham took the people who followed him, and they started moving out of ancient Mesopotamia towards what we call the land of Canaan. But since then, there was a group, which we call a nation, but originally it's not a nation. It's a group of people who united based on an ideology. And the ideology was, we have to rise above human egoism, so that, as it was called, love covers all crimes, love covers all differences. We have to connect above our differences. That was the root of Judaism, the initial root of Judaism, which Kabbalah references, the authentic wisdom of Kabbalah references to this day. And so, over time, people couldn't keep that condition of love thy friend as thyself, of living in social cohesion, of raising their level of unity above their differences, which requires continuous effort and work in human connection, in building positive bonds. And so they didn't make that happen, and that's where religions emerged. First Judaism, and then Christianity, and then Islam. And so you can see also what's written in the Torah, that Abraham sent gifts to the eastern part of the world. That's also the origin of the Eastern teachings that we're familiar with. And then there's many different kinds of belief systems and faiths and religions that essentially originated because they needed to replace that method of human connection, as if to compensate for it. The original method of Kabbalah talks about building human connection to the level of love covers all differences, love thy friend as thyself. And that is essentially the rule by which human beings can coexist. But since that point in time, there was a division, a separation between the wisdom of Kabbalah, the authentic wisdom of Kabbalah, and all the religions and belief systems. And because Judaism originated in the wisdom of Kabbalah, and it belongs to the wisdom of Kabbalah to some extent, then all the other religions and belief systems have this deep-seated animosity and hatred towards Judaism, towards the Jews. But it is deeply embedded in human society. And so it can't be just healed or you can't fight it. In sometimes in history it goes up, sometimes it goes down, but there is a unique relationship towards or attitude towards that Abrahamic group. Since then, of course, that group went through a lot of ups and downs and different dispersions and reconnections and so on. But still, humanity relates to that group differently. They identify a different attitude to life that exists in these people. And it's true that they don't have a God, because their actual God is love and unity among all. So they don't really belong to all the other religions. That was the original worldview and faith and belief and so on, that everyone must achieve unity that covers all differences. That's the genuine core of Judaism, or the authentic wisdom of Kabbalah. Jews themselves today are unaware of what I'm saying. Most of them. A lot of them even despise the wisdom of Kabbalah because it necessitates working on general unity and love between everyone. However, the Kabbalists find themselves kind of pushed aside and in a very different place from religions, including Judaism. And to this day, this is the relationship. However, with regards to the hatred towards the people of Israel, towards the Jews, it is because at the foundation of Judaism, there was this knowledge, this ideal of love thy friend as thyself. And that's what ultimately human evolution is pushing us towards. Humanity has to achieve that, but it does no longer know about it. Jews are unaware of that being something they need to show the world and present to the world. And that's why, instinctively, there is this deep-seated demand towards the Jews because they don't deliver this unity for humanity surrounding that principle of love, the work on love, covering all of the human ego, all the differences, all the crimes, as it's called. I wrote about this a lot and at length. I can say a lot more, but let me stop here.
Yeah. Thank you. So Professor Bronner, so this is a very particular kind of hate and animosity, not exactly just that Dr. Laitman is talking about. How does that sit with the general hate that we see? Do you feel it jives with it, or?
Let me put it this way. I think they're basic psychological structures or existential structures for prejudice. Prejudice means, from the Latin, prejudgment. And so what any bigot does is prejudge the target of his hatred. There's also paranoia involved, and paranoia in the sense that this is the evil other. And the evil other, it's a threat to my, in my view, to my ego. And therefore I have to respond in this way. In order to embody the evil other, we set up stereotypes and scapegoats. And this is also part of a general idea of hatred, as are myths, which are then employed. There are, in my view, I think my colleague is quite right that there's a religious root that probably doesn't exist with most other forms of hatred. But there's also something else, and I tried to talk about this in A Rumor About the Jews, and I would suggest that everyone who's concerned about hatred look at the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. This is, in a certain way, the Communist Manifesto of the anti-Semite. And one of the things that's so interesting in the protocols, which are really not very sophisticated, but one of the things that's interesting is that the Jew is everywhere. The Jew is a socialist, he's a communist, he's an avant-gardist, he's a banker, he's a teacher, he's everywhere. And the question is, how do you have these contradictory positions? The Jew is a capitalist, the Jew is a worker. The answer is that there are hidden forces, hidden Jews, the elders of Zion, who are holding everything together. Now, you can think of various interchangeable prejudices. For example, Latinos are dirty and loud. That's what used to be said about the Irish. But to cut it short, what's special about the Jews, I think, is this. There is no other group that's believed to threaten Christian civilization in toto. In other words, they're everywhere. You can say many things about racism, But nobody is going to say that African Americans control the capital of America, the economic capital of America, and run the various movements that are opposed to it. That's where the Jews come in, and they have. I'm sorry.
No, but what you're describing is like a modern day version of that.
No, this goes back. Norman Cohn, for example, in his great book *Warrant for Genocide*, really drives this back to the beginnings. In France, in post-revolutionary France, around 1789, there was one counter-revolutionary anti-Semite who believed that the Jews were in the sewers of Paris, directing everything that took place during the revolution. And you can find this in various situations regarding pogroms, where the Jews are considered, on the one hand, very rich and very poor. In fact, in the, of course, I forgot the name of the book, by the historical novelist Leon Feuchtwanger, speaks, now I remember, Yud Sus, who is also, he was a symbol for the Nazis, but goes back to the Middle Ages. And Yud Sus was accused of both fomenting revolt from below and of exploiting the Christian populace from above. This is a very unique situation, because if it's true what I'm suggesting, that the Jew is everywhere, and that the, shall we say, the conspiratorial Jews are invisible. We speak about the hidden hand of the Jews. Well, then you don't know who they are. And if you don't know who they are, you have to get rid of all of them. And I think this is one of the themes that the Nazis picked up on.
So this is actually a question to Dr. Laitman. I mean, I'm trying to trace it back, and like, how come people have this feeling that the Jews are everywhere? Such a small group, people feel like they're everywhere. People have such conflicting, accusations against them. It's almost, and even now, forget Middle Ages, even now with information open, Google, all that, still people have this weird concept.
The protocols still sell.
Right, still sell. So
not only in the Arab world, but in the West.
Right. So I want to know, like,
of course, that is actually understandable. The thing is that Jews and the rest of the nations of the world are divided by two forces of nature. There is something called a force of reception and a force of bestowal. The Jews they carry a root, a link to the force of bestowal in nature, and they can be a conduit for that force in the world, but they're not doing so. The rest of the world...
The positive force, Dr. Laitman, is this like plus and minus? We're talking about it in these terms?
Well, plus and minus, just like in electricity, you have to have both. You need both, but you need balance between both, and then they can be reciprocally and mutually connected. But because the world is driven by the human ego, and yet the Jewish group, that group originally, had a method for how to balance that ego. Look at the crisis that is escalating today. If you really understand what's going on in the world, you see that there is a multifaceted, globally integrated crisis. And it is escalating, and it's integrated and interdependent, and it's never been like that before. And that's because the human ego of humanity is gradually growing. It's exponentially growing, and we are becoming interconnected across the globe. How and what can we do about it? So the wisdom of Kabbalah explains it simply. The human ego, the growth of the human ego, the natural growth of the human ego needs to be balanced with another force, You can call that a positive force, a force of unity, the force of bestowal. But we have to know how to extract that natural force from nature itself, how to take it from potential to actual, how to reveal that force. And then we can balance it, just like plus and minus. So then with that conduit, with that resistor between the plus and minus, you can produce good productive outcomes from both plus and minus. But otherwise, humanity is gradually deteriorating once again into a world war, once again into such crises. You can predict these outcomes. The thing is that there is this relentless hatred towards Jews because they carry, I'm not talking about Jews as just plain people on the street, going to their synagogue or whatever. They don't understand anything about what I'm saying right now. But in the wisdom of Kabbalah, there is a method that comes from the foundation of that group, which was a model for how to balance the human ego, how human beings can balance the human ego and live together. That needs to be revealed and model and put in front of the world as a model. So people think that there is something hidden, some method, some key, something is hidden in the Jews. Where does the protocols of the elders of Zion comes from? I'm saying, take the wisdom of Kabbalah. It's all in front of you. Learn it. Understand what it is. That's why I'm writing books to further clarify it, and other Kabbalists do the same. Essentially, it's about how to balance the human ego so that we can have both the negative and positive force balanced, and then we can live in peace with each other. It's not about the Jews in terms of, those 15 or 20 million Jews in the world. It's not the point. What the world cannot get rid of is how to solve the problem of the human ego. That's what lies at the core. That's the balance that we are lacking, and that's why what is demanded from the Jews. That's what is needed from the Jews, to take from their ancient method of the wisdom of Kabbalah the way for how to balance that negative force with the positive force. This is a problem that hasn't been solved to this day. And that's why in every cycle, so to speak, of history, where the human ego grows, once again we fall into it. And then the ego grows again and we fall into this problem again.
Something worth considering. I mean, it's a very interesting position that you put forth. There's also a danger in the collapse of ego boundaries. Freud spoke about that, and one of the places you see that is with any form of totalitarianism. Now, of course, the totalitarians are not interested in love and solidarity the way you are, but when Hitler's slogan is "Ein Volk, ein Führer, ein Reich," one people, one leader, one empire, what he's talking about is an inner unity between the three, which is unmediated and unreflective. I think one of the things, in order to determine the difference between the positive and the negative, as you put it, is we have to educate people to use reflection. And, the term teaching critical thinking has become sort of a catch-all for anything. And critical thinking, above all, means you use reflection, that you understand the given social, economic, and political situation, and here I'm certainly with you, the role of the victim and of the agent within it. It means changing tactics. It means, for example, using the possibilities that exist now, not to simply eliminate the problem, I totally agree with you, but to mitigate it. And one of the ways to mitigate it, I think, is solidarity among groups that are victimized, discriminated against, and the like, build a cosmopolitan consciousness with them, and do in a certain way what you're doing, namely use the media, which is precisely what is not being done. We can't have a situation where constantly Jews are talking to Jews. That doesn't go anywhere. We need a concentrated politics, if I can put it that way, that speaks to solidarity amongst these other groups with the Jews. And here is the love that you're talking about. My friend Cornel West always emphasized the role of love. And I'm, I guess, a little more skeptical, but in principle, I understand what he's talking about and what you're talking about. And I think that's quite important. There is also a book by the great thinker, Eric Fromm, who was one of the very few philosophers who was grounded, actually knew what he was talking about with regard to religion, right? Called The Art of Loving. And young people love that book. When I've taught it, they've thought it was wonderful. And I think that's the way we have to move forward. There's no reason why the metaphysical and the material should simply be set up as rigid oppositions to one another.
So basically, if I'm kind of following from what you're saying, what happened in Germany, there was this ideal that you can unite, towards this one people, one leader, one country, but there was still the hate of all the others.
Exactly.
That part was not dealt with. And what Dr. Laitman, you're saying, if I hear, is that you can't eliminate that force of hate, that egoistic force.
Right.
Somehow one has to cover the other. Can you explain how this is done?
I think part of this is figuring out what the two different forces are through reflection, and being very careful about how you want to get rid of the ego.
So hold on. So Dr. Laitman, are we getting rid of the ego, or are we somehow doing
or
something?
mitigating it? I mean, the Nazis did, of course, did that too. But one of the things that happened organizationally under Nazism and under any form of totalitarianism is what the Nazis called coordination. That is to say that all forces in society, all institutions, target one enemy together. And this would be, if you like, newspapers, radio, the SS,
right.
all the different...
The propaganda machine. So I want to hear from Dr. Laitman how, what's the approach here? I mean, how do we solve it here?
We are not supposed to eradicate anything in nature, not the minus or the plus, not the ego or the counter force of love. What we need to do is bring them to balance. Balance is the key. Both are needed. They naturally develop by nature. It is embedded in nature. They need to develop. It's part of the plan. But humanity, in between these forces, need to find a conscious balance between these forces, the correct attitude to both hate and love. You need both. You cannot have one without the other. We need to understand that we are under the laws of nature. These laws of nature that act upon us are deterministic, and it is up to the human species to create such a relationship between hatred, love, rejection, attraction, between these two forces, again, so that we relate to them in a correct, reciprocal, balanced way, conscious way. Again, this is what's encapsulated in the maxim, love covers all crimes. By coming to the right usage of using both the negative and positive aspects, forces, then we can come to build a balanced, peaceful life in society. That's something we need to learn how to do and be conscious of doing so. That is what human society is missing. That's what we're not doing. The moment we let one of the forces go away, we then can end up killing for love, like we talked about. Just like you kill for hate, it doesn't matter. What's missing is balance between these two forces. And so this is something we call in Kabbalah the middle line. A part of this and a part of that are each time being sort of mediated and working together for the global benefit of human society. So what I see is that we're going to have to learn how to do it. Otherwise, we are looking towards an eruption of a horrible crisis in human society. I'm very hopeful that we will be able to realize this. And that's why I very much appreciate conversations like these with scientists or thinkers, just as Stephen. And I'll be very happy to collaborate in whatever way to bring this forward.
I want to, Stephen, you're also, you mentioned the International Council for Diplomacy and Dialogue. Is this something that close to what Dr. Laitman is saying? What are you doing there?
Let me put it this way. I don't think my esteemed colleague would find a lot of problems with it. We do a number of different things. First of all, it's very new. We just put up our website. And we've already gotten interest from a number of different representatives of different countries and of different groups. Our purpose is very simple. One, we want to give a voice to the voiceless. In other words, there are groups around, you can think of the Yazidis or the Roma, who really have no representation on an international scale. So that's one thing we'd like to do. The second thing we'd like to do is, to the best of our abilities, bring together opposing factions among the voiceless. Because usually the more disempowered a group is, the more factionalism there is. And quite right, this is something we have to overcome. The third thing is, of course, the battle against hate. And we're actually planning down the road a set of conferences and public events that confront hate and confront genocide. One of them will deal with anti-Semitism, I have no doubt. But what we're trying to do is do this on a transnational scale or an international scale. So we've already become observers at the UN in Geneva, and what should I say, participants in official participants in UNESCO. And I think we have to, one of the worst mistakes Israel is making, by the way, the United States also, is cutting itself off from the international community. One can't move forward in the way that's been suggested without the international community, both for publicity, I mean, quite in practical terms, for publicity, for organization, and in a certain way also for spiritual guidance or ideological guidance. If we want to build a cosmopolitan sensibility, we have to know about other groups and other religions.
So that's Dr. Laitman, is this something that the whole world is waking up to do? Everyone can roll their sleeves and start uniting. I know you speak specifically about the role of Jews as catalysts because we've had that memory of unity from before. So should the Jews do something? Should the whole world wake up? Is there a first and a second? What's the relationship here?
Well, In truth, I see the Jews that as those that have to awaken first in order to be a model for their method of unity. And in not doing so, they let a lot of troubles happen. And the Jewish people need to understand that. But how? So first of all, we address everyone, the world, the public, all nations. And there should be an expression of that expectation from the Jews. And so then the Jews, as a response, they'll begin to look for and extract their method for human connection and then start displaying it to the world. That is a dynamic that I see that needs to happen, and this way it might happen. Because look, this method exists, it is open to all, but no one wants to approach it, no one wants to access it, no one's working on it. That's the problem. And that's why, as Kabbalists, which are just a few thousand people around the world, that's it, we recognize this method and that it needs to be utilized, but we don't have sufficient power, resources, exposure for how to spread it and have everyone use it. And also, generally speaking, the human ego drives all people, and so they don't want, naturally, they don't have an inclination to use it, because it's about unity, and people don't have a natural inclination towards this kind of connection and unity above the ego. I meet a lot of people in the world, and from different factions. And take Sufis, for example, Sufism. They are sort of Kabbalists of Islam. They're talking about the same thing. Or Tibetans. There are people who understand this, but who's listening to them? They are typically pushed aside. And so Kabbalists essentially are holding a means by which to make the world better, healthier, peaceful, but no one wants to listen to it. And everyone is drawn to the rat race and to the competition and to conflicts and how to keep strengthening that force. And that's the state we're in.
Can anyone,
if I can add one point, which I think is important, just like a tradition for an intellectual tradition is set up with regard to the Kabbalah, I think they're also against the traditions of hate, of anti-Semitism, of racism, and the like. There are also other traditions. They're cosmopolitan traditions, which go back a long way. Socrates taught a slave mathematics. I was in Persepolis. I was at Persepolis, and you could see how different groups were brought together by Cyrus the Great to build that structure, which was then destroyed. You have people like Goethe translating Hafez, who's the greatest of the Persian poets, and his great poem was called the Divan. Goethe wrote the West-East Divan. That's the kind, and we can bring this up to the present, of course, figures like Einstein and the like. That's what we have to be teaching people, this cosmopolitan tradition that's reflective and which respects different cultures, but which speaks to the kind of unity that's been talked about here.
So, guys, everyone kind of...
And join an organization. I'm convinced of that. You want to fight? You can't fight alone.
Right. So, Dr. Laitman, can everyone kind of, make for himself the God of love, this, and join this movement towards unity? If I feel it inside of me, if I feel, I wasn't born Jewish, let's say, but I feel like we need to somehow bring this unity to the people. Can I be part of it, or is it an exclusive thing?
Well, if you're asking about my organization, it's open to everyone. There are people from all religions and all belief systems and all nations and cultures and all layers of the population, Arabs, Americans, South Americans, it doesn't matter. You name it. Everywhere, all continents and all nations. We welcome everyone and teach everyone the same method of how, as human beings, we can find balanced human connection between us, because that's the only way we can see a better future happening.
Okay, I feel like I want to hear more about this, how we're doing this between the work that Professor Bronner is doing and what Dr. Laitman is doing. I feel like almost maybe we're coming close to one day having maybe a panel of all the people that can talk about it.
Sure.
And that would be...
No.
Well, if someone can assist in making such a thing happen, I think we'll all be happy to see it happening. And also, thank you, everyone, and then I'd love to speak more to the professor. And let's hope that we can actually work to make this human society better, and also have a lot of success in setting up these organizations and your work in the UN and UNESCO. I appreciate it a lot, and I'll be very happy to meet with both of you more and discuss this more. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Likewise.
No.
I want to be also clear on something else. The type of sectarianism that's around today is really defeating. There's got to be room for different kinds of organizations with different approaches to a problem which obviously hasn't been solved. So we have to try something new. We have to be open to new possibilities.
I totally agree. Thank you for taking the time, Professor Bronner, Dr. Laitman. Please,
Dr. Laitman, a great pleasure to meet you.
All our viewers, please like, share, comment below. We want to hear what you have to say. Bring up the tough questions. How do we do it? Where do we do it? We want to hear it. We want to talk about it. And we'll see you on another Honest Conversation. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.